All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Growing Band Director podcast. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 60, and we're doing this all on reflections of Midwest, and then what was great about it, and why you should go to Midwest, and then resolutions, and how we're going to be improving as band directors coming up. And I have three very special guests with me. But before we start, I want to thank Jacob and Thomas for reaching out recently about how the podcast is helping you in your teaching and networking with other people. And I just want to say thank you for reaching out. Also, thank you to our newest Patreon members who are just joining us recently on the Patreon platform. And we're really happy to have you. Thank you to Craig and to Jim and to Lauren. And we just had Hailey back in. She had to move her car. And but we hadn't actually introduced anybody yet. So
okay.
Why don't we start with you?
Oh, wow.
So from my left to right, I have three of my closest friends, Hailey Francoeur, Adam Newton, and Joey Hendricks. And they're all fantastic teachers. And what I think what puts you guys all in the same category, even though we all play completely different instruments. Like, we actually have a band here.
Yeah,
We'll have to do
that
later.
Yeah. Is that I think all three of you are in the category of teachers who just get it done, right? Like, whatever comes your way, you just have to roll with the punches and you just do it, right? Yeah. So
it's education in a nutshell, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially these days.
Yeah. Very true.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Hailey, since you just came in on Festive Sweater Day, tell us a little bit about your background. A short intro.
Okay. I grew up here in Westbrook, went to Westbrook High School and went to Southern New Hampshire University for my degree, and I teach at Sanford High School currently. The band director there. This is my second year, and just trying to continue to build that program and just kind of keep things moving there. Working on my master's in wind conducting as well. But yeah.
And you're a percussionist.
I'm a percussionist, yes. Play the drums.
But originally
I was a flute player. And then a vocalist.
Oh.
And then I landed here.
Yep.
So, and it worked out so far. So.
Well, you're very passionate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do my best.
Yeah. And one thing that's great about you is you always seem like you're trying to get better.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Welcome to the profession.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, figured that out quick.
All right, let's move to Adam. Adam, one of my tuba player band director friends.
So I teach in the Gardner Main Schools. It's MSAD 11, and I direct the 5th and 6th grade band up there. I also help out with the 7th and 8th grade band. I help out with the middle school chorus groups, and I also work with the Westbrook Marching Band. So, during the fall, a couple times a week, I drive an hour and a half to Westbrook to help out with the Westbrook Marching Band program, which is great for me, hearing doing middle school music all day and then working with a high school group. That really helps benefit me and teaches me a lot about things that I can do with my own students too. And that's a great resource for me and great thing for me professionally to be able to do as well.
Well, I actually learn from you every time we're together. I don't know if you know this or not. But one thing you do really well is the opposite of what I do. I tend to try to hurry through things and to do it as quick as I can. And you seem, every time you're explaining a concept, to you slow it down and you try to be as clear as possible for the students so that they understand the material that you're teaching. Sometimes you actually take a little more time than I would take, but that teaches me that I should probably repeat more and take a little bit longer in explaining things.
That probably, for me, comes from the middle school mentality where a lot of times these days you have to repeat it 5 times for them to get it. So that's probably where I get it from.
Wonderful. Joey.
So I grew up in South Portland, graduated from there in 2012. Then I went to the University of New Hampshire where I got my undergrad. I then taught at Yarmouth High School for 6 years. And then this year just started in the Westbrook school system. So teach with you and Crystal at the high school and middle school. So I do grades 5 through 12, as well as work with the marching band and jazz and all that fun stuff. And before you mention it, I am a saxophone player.
But no one's perfect.
Okay.
Wow, usually it's the drum joke.
I know, usually. I was not expecting the saxophone slander, but that's fine.
But you play a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, so growing up, I sort of figured out in like 8th grade that I wanted to be a band director. So very early on, Jean Quinn, who was my middle school teacher, I was like, hey, I want to learn this. And she's like, great, here you go. I kind of just like started teaching myself everything. So before I graduated high school, I think I could play pretty much everything but tuba as far as like band instrument goes. So here we are.
We'll hook up
So
sometime.
we could really start a band here.
We really could.
We could do that.
What do
Okay.
What do you need?
I remember when you were in school and Skeff says, I have this kid who's a freshman and he doubles on life. Right. So, yeah, the fact that you play everything and teaching with you're very able to go with the flow, which is super awesome. Again, something that I try to learn from because I'm usually pretty like, nope, we're going to do it this way and that's it. And you're able to like get to the same objective, but feel like you're flexible.
Well, I found really early on, like second day of teaching, that like if you go in with like, at least for me, if you go in with like too strict of a plan, like there's gonna be a handful of kids that like don't understand how you explain something or whatever. So you really just like had to be flexible and like do that, which I think I try to get better at every year. But yeah, it's rare that like no one size fits all when it comes to education, I find.
I'm also amazed how you can be so flexible, but also such a planner. Like the other day, I was like, we had to go back and do some paperwork on some what he did on a lesson or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, November 7th or whatever. Yeah, he pulled it right up and he's like, oh, we did this, 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 and this. And I was like, whoa.
I have a whole doc. Yeah,
I know about
that's
people.
what I stole from Yarmouth.
I know a lot of people use planners. And so then they look back each year and all that. But like the detail you had was pretty unbelievable.
Wow.
Anyways, so woodwind player, trumpet player, tuba player, percussionist. We could do all the things.
Yeah.
Let's start a band.
All right. Cool. You need like a jingle for this? We can make one.
That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Sure.
We need one of those, like, between all of us, like, playing all of the different instruments, like 12 different windows or whatever, and they're all just us doing all of them.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be amazing.
I will play trumpet. Whoever wants to organize that. It's officially off my plate and onto yours.
Right.
Okay. And all of you, I'm very jealous, you all went to Midwest. And I did not. So I want to hear about it. I want to hear why it was so. First, let's start with, if people are new to Midwest, why should we go to Midwest?
Well, it was pretty awesome, not going to lie. There was so much there. There was a really wide range of anything from picking repertoire to finding new repertoire to just watching, hearing from just the greats in our profession, but also all the vendors that were there. I mean, it was anything that you could need was right there, all in one place. And then the networking opportunity, too, to just meet people from around the country, around the world. That was pretty, to me, for that being my first time, that was kind of the big thing that I was just kind of observing and looking around like, wow, all of these people do the same thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I thought this was such a, niche thing, and here's hundreds, thousands of people in this one place that all do the same thing.
I know for me, like my why at the end of it kind of became two things, was learning new techniques on doing what I do, but also sort of regaining that spark, regaining that motivation for what I'm doing. Seeing, not just people and programs that are doing amazingly well, but also being able to talk with band directors who are in a similar situation to me, and being able to, realize, I mean, I've known it all along that there are plenty of other programs that are like mine, but being able to talk to those people in real life and be
Describe
like,
your
yeah,
program. Describe your program in 30 seconds or less. Your town.
It's a small town program. I mean, my sixth grade band has 50 students in it. In fifth grade beginners, I've got about 75.
What's the population of Gardner?
Probably less than 10 grand.
Yeah.
I mean, probably 8 grand, I would
That's
say.
pretty great for that
So,
size.
Yeah. So it's, so being able, like I said, to talk to other directors who have programs very similar size to mine was, and it didn't occur to me before I went there that I would probably meet people like that. I knew I would see wonderful, amazing programs too, but it didn't occur to me that I'd also be talking to people on my similar level too, and that was mind-blowing for me.
Because it can be so isolating, right? You're the only one in your building, usually. I mean, I know we share sometimes, and a lot of people out there get the share, but basically you're the only one who does what you do, and then you have to. So I can imagine how that feels to like realize there's this whole community of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're out there, and you just, they're probably not far away from you.
Yeah.
And then getting those contacts and that network, like, I'm sure those people you could like reach out to in the future to like, get tips from or like exchange back and forth. Yeah, absolutely. Not to sound like a broken record because they said everything I was going to say. But also on top of it is just there's so many resources that like, you can get from this, both physical and just like pedagogically, that you can bring back to your classroom. Like I got a couple of books for free. I think I sent you and Crystal a picture and I brought them too. And also like a lot of the sessions in the slideshows that they presented that we still have access to, they're like, hey, here's some good like tonguing exercises. Here's pictures of good and bad embouchures, like stuff that you could use to show your kids like, hey, this is why you're sounding bad. Like here's a picture of it kind of thing. So all of that stuff that, I don't want to say steal, but to steal and use from like the best of the best around the country will just make all of our programs that much more successful.
Yeah.
And what's funny too is some of these other programs who we consider these big model programs, right? They do a lot of similar stuff as what we all do, right? And I found that some programs, like a lot of our programs, are very alike. The big thing that's different is the size, right? If you have a quality program in a small town of 8,000 people versus a town of 250,000 people, right? If you have 3,500 people in your high school versus 600 people in your high school, well, I mean, what I'm truly amazed at is some of those teachers who literally have 75% of the school in their band. That we have 400 people and there's 300 in the band. Like that to me is what's insane.
Yeah.
But some of these other programs, like you see these amazing groups that you saw at Midwest, right? We probably all have like, 4 kids who could play in that group, right? It's like, but they just have so many more players. And I was talking to somebody a number of years ago. I forget where it was, but they had an amazing program. And they said, Kyle, I have all the same weak players that you have, but I have 10 times more of them. Right? So it's very similar. We just have such a smaller amount of people.
Yeah.
So what are we taking away from Midwest? Like I want to hear about specific clinics. I want to hear about specific techniques, things that blew your mind. Can we start with the active music listening, the Andy Boysen clinic? Did you guys go to that?
Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
You did. Did you go to that? No.
That made me feel validated.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Some of when it first started, because the band would play something, and then on our phones we would choose what we would pick first to fix.
Oh, so it was interactive.
It was so interactive.
It was very
incredible.
interactive. It was like Family Feud, but with a band.
So I wonder who came up with that, because it couldn't have been Andy.
It was him.
Like Andy
that was all his idea.
But he's not the technology guy.
Well, Casey made the technology,
Oh.
but he came up with the idea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it was just cool. Like they'd play something, and in my head, like I always doubt myself, as I'm sure most of us do, when it comes to am I doing the right thing? And so they'd play something, and I'd be the first one. I was like, what's everyone else picking here? And then I picked, no, I'm going to pick what I hear. And that was the top choice. And I was like, oh, cool. And then the next one, like same thing. But, none of them were the wrong answer. It was just what do your ears go to first. But like to see that I fit in the majority there, and I was hearing things, I was doing the right thing. It was just cool to see that and to have a whole room of people just kind of sitting there going, what do I hear there?
Yeah. And it was great because that group, I wrote down who they were. The Wheaton Warrenville South High School, they're the group that played. They did a song first to show, like, hey, this is a really successful program. And then what we were voting for and listening on, they were playing Yosemite Autumn by Mark Camphouse. And they're like, oh, we've worked on this a little bit, but, like, it's still a work in progress. So we weren't listening to, like, a fully polished product. It was a high school group still working on something, which made it more authentic, which was genius.
Yeah.
And then, after the voting happened, like, Andy would be like, so raise your hand if you pick that top voice, and people would raise their hand. He would, like, cold call people, be like, okay, so what should we do first? And, like, so the audience was also helping, like, run this rehearsal, and just, he would go back to, oh, this is this, like, kind of rehearsal technique and everything, which, it was just great.
It was great. And he did a really good job, too, of, like, making sure the students didn't feel bad about, like, fixing, like, he had a whole moment at the start, was like, we're not picking on you, we're just, rehearsing. He made that very clear, which I thought was really good, because a lot of those other bands that were lab bands were just like, they'd do something and then the whole room picks them apart, but he was very clear with, like, we love you, we're just trying to,
This is a room full of educators trying to help you be better. Like,
So in case this is new to people, this came out through CHOS in the last year. Andrew Boysen Jr., active what's it called? Active techniques in listening.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
I should have written it down.
And if people are new to it, you get scores and you get recordings of bands, basically sight reading, and then kind of 80%, one of which was my group. And I tease Andy, when you're looking for a group where you want to hear mistakes, make sure you ask our group because we'll give you plenty of them, right? And so then you can do this on your own. But when you did it at Midwest, it was just everybody kind of doing it together.
Yeah.
Back in September, I did a session with Andy. If people haven't checked out that, they should, because Andy and Lindsay, they talked about that a little bit as well. So what else about that? I didn't mean to cut that discussion off.
Oh, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I thought, and we talked about this a little bit before recording, that some sessions felt like it was an advertisement for their book or product the entire time, whereas this was the entire thing. Then at the very end, he was like, oh, by the way, this is a book. Like, it wasn't advertising the entire time, even though it was.
Right.
But he didn't, that wasn't the whole point of the session. It was, here's how I can help you all become better educators. Let's learn together.
If anybody's looking to find somebody to learn from, he's great. Oh, yeah. I remember sitting in his Wind Symphony, and just you're amazed because he would just stop when his brain was full. He would basically say 5 things. He'd say, when you get to 5 things, stop if you can remember them all, right? So then he'd stop and he'd fix this and he'd fix that and then this and then that and then that. Okay, then everybody together. Now, middle school, high school, I can't really fix more than 2 things without having everybody play again, or else they're jumping off the walls or whatever. But and he was always really good at going for the big things first, right? Because as younger teachers, a lot of times you hear something that's a problem and you want to fix the dynamic in the 3rd clarinets or the articulation length in the 3rd trombone, rather than hey, we're not playing the right rhythm together.
Right.
Or we're in the wrong key signature.
Right.
The ability
before the concert.
The ability as a teacher to hear the big things, the most important things, and then whittle down to the smaller things as it goes, I think is one thing that book is really going to help teach people.
Yeah. And it was like, if you picked, if intonation was the top thing that everybody picked, he would go to the next slide and talk about how you could fix it and what that would also fix if you fix that thing. So it wasn't just yay, you picked the thing, let's fix it and move on. He in depth explained it. And just resources that you could use to further, I think he talked about warm-ups and things like that that you could do. He brought up the directed listening model book a lot, which I thought was really helpful.
And I thought it was also validating to a sense, kind of like you were mentioning, that whatever I voted for could be one of the top 3 answers. Yeah. And he's like, well, if the top answer is intonation, that also, pertains to balance and to listening and all this stuff. Yeah. So even if yours wasn't the top answer, they're all connected because they all, affect what's going on in the group, which was really nice.
Yeah.
What I love about this method is it's clearly, originally, I think, aimed for newer teachers who get on the podium and say, okay, they conduct and then they stop and they go, what am I going to work on now?
Right.
Whereas veteran teachers, we're kind of thinking that all the time. Then when we stop, I remember Mark DeTurk at University of New Hampshire would always say, the middle school cutoff is, you'd cut off, and at the same time as you released, you'd say, don't talk, right? You have to talk right when, or else if you leave that break after cutting off, that they're just going to start doing that, right? So, but I think he's found that a lot of people who are veteran teachers, it helps refresh what they're listening to, right? And
Absolutely.
So it's not just for younger teachers, even though that was the original design.
Right.
On a similar vein, one of the sessions I went to was with Chip DeStefano of the McCracken Middle School Symphonic Band in Illinois, and exact same thing. As soon as he heard one, the tiniest thing that could be made better, he could say, bari sax on your D, it's a tiny bit sharp, bring that down, and just instantaneously just rattle that right off. And he just blew my mind. I mean, him and his band. I mean, his band was there performing. And absolutely, just in that instant, know exactly how to make the sound better. And that's something that, all of us try to do every single time. And sometimes we're better at it than others. I fully admit that. And, but just every single time, it's that one little thing that can just step it up that one notch. And so on a similar vein, he's always listening for, it's probably in his mind like a list of 500 things that could all go wrong. And I heard 5 of them, and here's what they are. Boom, boom,
and
boom,
sometimes it's okay, I haven't picked on this section for a while, so what I'm going to say is going to be a bari sax thing.
Right.
Whereas it might really be clarinet too, but you've just hammered on that kid for the last 3 weeks,
Right.
or kids, and you
Or for the last 30 minutes. I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I went to a session that I think was probably one of my biggest takeaways called "If My Ensemble Sounds So Good, Why Do I Feel So Bad?"
Mm-hmm.
And
I wanted to get to that one.
yeah, Scott Lang did that, and it was very eye-opening.
Where's he from? Do you remember?
I don't.
Okay.
But he, like, it was a very animated, like, he was, like, yelling at you from the start to, like, get you into it. And I mean, like, yelling. But he kept saying, like, I don't remember his exact words, but he was saying, like, our profession is a soul-sucking, life-draining, like, profession. And he basically said, you should feel bad at the end of the day if you're doing your job correctly, because it's a soul-sucking, life-draining, profession. But he made a really good point at one time where he said, be the educator that you are. Stop trying to be somebody else. Stop trying to get your band to a level that you just probably can't. And he was like, I know that my band will never be a Midwest band, and that's fine. I'm going to do what I can and make my band the best that, we can do in our area. But, we're, being from Maine, it's hard for us to get to Grand National Championship, right? Mm-hmm. We can dream and we can try, but we shouldn't be, killing ourselves over trying to get to that point. But the whole session had like a QR code. So you were answering a survey at certain points. He'd have you stop and answer these questions about, why did you get in the profession? What do you want people to see you as? What are your goals? What do you want to do with your band? And by the end, like last 5 minutes, he was like, okay, the next 5 months, you're going to get a visit from yourself every month. He had like an AI-generated thing, so I haven't gotten anything yet. But for the next 5 months, once a month, I'm supposed to get an email of myself, essentially, saying, why you're here, why you're doing this, to try to push you to keep going. So it was a very like, oh yeah, I kind of feel bad doing this. And I thought it was going to be you should stop doing so much. You should maybe not teach that ensemble anymore. You should, put that off. And it was just more about how to handle everything and just kind of how to take your time and just be at peace with what you're doing.
More uplifting.
Yeah, more uplifting and not like stop doing all the things, which was nice because most people just tell you stop doing all those things.
Right.
Like he was saying, like his kids started doing all of the bus forms for him because that was taking time. And one kid was like, I'm going to do all the bus forms for the entire year, and did it in one day when it usually takes him, weeks to do it or a certain spread of time.
Spreading it out, right.
And yeah, so she just did them all at one day and handed them in, and it was all done. So he was talking about like dictating tasks like that. But
we are bad at asking for help.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what he said. Like when the kid was like, I want to do this, he was like, no. And she was like, Mr. Lang, I'm doing this. And so she did it, and he was like, oh, well, you see, this is wrong. And she was like, no, it's actually right, because we're always late to that game because you don't remember that that's a game that starts an hour early. And he was like, okay, yeah, keep doing that. So it was just cool to hear that from somebody and not hear like, oh, you just should not be doing so much. It was cool I'm excited to get that email of like myself. I want to know what that's going to be like, and
Because I'm sure you'll forget, and then you'll get it.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm going to go, what is this? So, yeah, that was...
From Hailey? What?
What do you mean? That's so weird. But that was one of the sessions, like, that really impacted me. So...
Thinking back to one of the other ones I went to, and the exact name of the session escapes me, but it's basically, what do you do if you hear this? And the handout for that session was like it was practically a small book for every single instrument. Like if you hear a flat sound, if you hear this sound on every instrument, what are the steps you can guide the student through to make that sound better? And certain instruments like brass instruments, I could do that all day long. Flute, not so much. And so, it was great. I mean, and it's an incredible resource that I'm going to keep like right center on my desk and be like, okay, whenever if I hear it in a band rehearsal and right at that moment I'm not sure what to do to fix it, I'll look for next time and then be like, okay, do this, do this, do this. And an incredible resource.
I'm going to put that along with what Caitlin Ramsey sent out. I'm going to put that onto the folder for this episode for the Patreon members so they can access all of that if they want to.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think every band teacher needs to have it front and center in their desk because you're going to hear every single one of those sounds. So
Was that the "What do I do when I hear that" session?
That's-
And they had like the audio clips of like actual kids playing.
Yes.
Yeah, I went to that one too. That was
Yep,
great.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of us were cringing in the audience going, yep, I've heard that.
That's my band.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, and the point they're making is we've learned that we had to figure out how to do this because during remote teaching and COVID and everything, kids wouldn't turn their cameras on, but they'd be hearing these things and being like, maybe check your right hand, because they couldn't see what was going on, so they had to purely go based on what they're hearing, and then created this fantastic resource, just like you were saying, from this, which, fantastic.
Yeah. I went to another really cool one with Colonel Jason Fettig from the President's Own, and it was conducting Sousa with style. And there was so much about Sousa that I didn't know. I didn't know that he wasn't a march writer first and foremost, and that he was mainly a melody guy that really went more towards operas. So it was cool because he had a band with him, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was a community band. But they would play sections of a march, and then he would talk about, I thought it was going to be, add bells on the second strain, whatever. But it was like how to make it musical, because I think a lot of us get in the habit of, it's just a march, whatever, doing the thing.
This is the time, great.
Yeah, this is the time, just play it in time and we'll be good. But he talked about, how to bring the melody out, what the counter melody could do to help just, put it to that next level of making it sound actually musical, and you're not just playing through a Sousa march, and kind of what he intended. So I wrote a ton of notes for every march that they did. I just had no idea of some of the connections between, this march takes parts of this opera and the melody is from this. I didn't know any of that. So it was really eye-opening, and it was cool to, obviously just see him conduct Sousa was just interesting. And he talked about, they don't need you to conduct everything. That was his big thing. He was like, they don't need me in the Marine Band. They don't actually need me. I'm just there. Because, he was just throwing his hand up once in a while. He walked away at one point, and they're just doing their thing.
Right.
So that made me feel better, too, especially, working on my conducting stuff for my master's and hearing, you don't need to do all of those things all the time. They got it. So it was really eye-opening for me for the Sousa stuff.
Jeff Priest always says that the conductor is just the hood ornament to the Cadillac, right? If you look at the Cadillac and you see the hood ornament, if you rip it off, it's still a Cadillac. The conductor shows you what the music is supposed to look like.
Yep.
Even though that's not always our real world and where we live. But other thing I was going to mention, I saw Wynton Marsalis do this thing on marches. It was this Sousa to Satchmo video back from the late 90s, where he takes, has the early version of the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, as well as the Tanglewood Symphonic Orchestra, or something like that. And they play, I forget which march, but they play this march in that style and then the jazz style, and they break it down and how it's similar and all that. And he talks about the counter melody along with the melody. Now in jazz ensemble, that's the counter melody is the clarinet obbligato line that goes on top of the melody, whereas in the march, it's usually the trombone, tenor sax, baritone part, right? So he talked a lot about altitude, about the altitude of airplanes, like how can two airplanes take off and go at the same time and cross each other and not crash. Well, if one is 10,000 feet higher than the other, then it works fine. So if you compare the melody to the counter melody, the fact that they're moving at similar times, they do have moving parts at separate times, right? So they work really well together. But at the same time, because they're an octave apart, your ear can process both of them and understand both of them. It's not just another melody. It's supposed to be, very complementary to the original melody. And the whole altitude thing was a really big takeaway for me, with the counter melody being down an octave. And if you bring that out and make it, like you said, more musical, then that helps the entire march.
Yeah, he had the band do some of those things where, play it just, normal, don't really do anything, and then he had them try to enhance it, and the difference was just insane for some of that.
And it's funny, sometimes you can just have even young students, you can say, how can you play that more musical? Like, how musical can you play that? And then a lot of times it just is much better.
Right.
Just by empowering them to play their best musicianship.
Right.
That does not always happen.
Right.
What is it? One of my friends says, emote freely doesn't always work for middle school kids.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get when you ask for
Yeah.
that. But no, that blows my mind, because having played tuba, sitting next to the euphoniums, who always
Right.
get these wonderful counter melodies, and you making that connection between that and the operas and whatever, that kind of blows my mind
Yeah.
right now, and it makes total sense.
I had that's what he started with, was did you know that Sousa was not just a march guy? And I was like, I I didn't know.
Are you sure?
I was like, what? So I just that just immediately took me. But he went through like all these different marches and said, it was from this opera. Can you hear, the melody there? And this is what was going on. And it blew my mind, some of that stuff. So it was really cool.
One of the sessions I went to that was validating, because a lot of the stuff that they were saying, I was like, oh, I do that stuff too. But also, I took a lot away from, was the Filling Your Toolbox for Effective Rehearsals, which was by Christine Cumberledge from Central Junior High in Texas, because, programs on there are insane. But one thing I thought she did really well for the session is she was like, okay, for this entire session, I'm treating you like my kids, and everything I talk about, I'm going to have you do. So she would talk about, when she has her kids do something, say, oh, when your section's finished writing in these things, stand up, just to keep the kids constantly moving, but also it's a visualizer for, oh, you've finished doing the task I asked, it's done. So she would have us do a barcode thing, whatever, answer it, and then actually stand up in the middle of the session and be like, okay, we're done. And then she would occasionally cold call people out and whatnot and whatever. But one of the biggest things that I took away from that, because I tried to go to more middle school sessions, because I'm still just new to teaching the middle school grade, because this is my first time doing it in my career, was how do I want to word this? She said that when she starts her beginners, which I think they do in 6th grade there, which, a lot of our programs here do that in 5th grade. She was like, yes, I pass out the books right away, but we don't start from page 1. She actually goes back and starts from the fingering charts. And what she has them do is she pantomime, she has the kids hold the instruments on their shoulder, so they can't physically play it, but they actually practice playing through the fingering chart, so they can think about how to go through the instrument. But then obviously she doesn't have them try to play a chromatic scale first week of beginning band. It's just hey, this is just so you know what's in the back. This is the fingering chart. Here's all the notes, but let's start with E on clarinet or whatever it is. Cool. Which at first when she was explaining it, I was like, that's insane. I thinking of the 5th graders I'm teaching now, I'm like, their minds would explode. Yeah. They wouldn't know what to do with this if I tried doing that. But she was saying how it's a kid went home and the next week came in to show her hey, I can play my chromatic scale. And she was thinking they were just going to show her. And this clarinet, 6th grade clarinet player put the clarinet together and played low E to high C. And she was like, what? So, and that's not something I necessarily want to try right away, being hey kids, go to the finger chart in the back, but just, I don't know, something different to think about as far as how to approach the beginning band thing of, even if you're not necessarily teaching it right away, if you show them the resource, a lot of the times the kids will just teach themselves, which I have found actually, because one of my saxophone 5th graders, we went to learn C before break, and he was like, actually, I looked in the back in the fingering chart, and an alternate version of playing C is B with the middle side key, and I was like, that's fantastic. These other kids won't be able to comprehend that, but great, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So thinking about what is a way that we could approach teaching how we normally teach differently, how could that be effective for our programs, or how could it be hurtful, kind of thing.
I find when I teach a chromatic scale, I frequently use the fingering chart. Just read from the fingering chart rather than there, and then once they're comfortable with the fingering pattern, then they go back and they read it too.
Right.
So similar to what Joey was just saying, the term that's kind of been floating in my mind after going to all the sessions I went to and everything, kind of old dog, new tricks. Doing the same things that band teachers have done for eons, but there are totally new ways to do them now. And that's something I need to remind myself a lot, is that back when they still made Oldsmobile cars, one of their slogans was this is not your father's Oldsmobile, this is not your father's concert band. Everything is totally different than even 5, 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. And we, I think, as band teachers need to remember that there are always new ways of accomplishing the same thing. And if way one doesn't work, there's 5 others behind it that could possibly work, and you need to remind yourself of that. Don't get stuck trying to do just the one thing that used to work. It might take something else to get there.
Right.
And I need to remind myself of that a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also find I used to be really bad at asking for help, especially early in my career, because I was just well, I know what I'm doing. I just graduated, so I know everything. I would just try to teach, and if something didn't work, I would just be whatever, they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then, as time goes on, it's no, there's people who know more than me, and I should reach out and ask for help and get some insight on how I can do this thing better, because I'm still not even 30. I don't know what I'm doing.
One of those tools that you use a lot is the John McAllister music website, right? Yes, I had a session with him a month or two ago, and if people haven't checked it out, they should. And I remember you reaching out right away, like, "Oh, I love the John McAllister stuff." So what's great about John McAllister stuff?
I mean, there's way more than I can describe in this podcast, really.
Right?
I mean, there's a lot of, resources on there, for sight reading and all sorts of rhythm activities and you name it. There's a ton out there. And it should be similar to what I was saying about the, what do you do if you hear this? It should be a resource that band teachers should go to
Yeah.
regularly.
The-
Really, it should be.
The cinematic warm-ups
Yeah.
are phenomenal. Like I do those with my kids, and it gets them to put emotion into like their warm-ups, because I always paint a scene. I'm like, what does this make you think of? And we make the whole movie to whatever that warm-up is. And I don't give them the sheet music. I put it up on the Promethean board, and some of them can kind of see it, but I just say, okay, we're in the key of whatever, this is 1. And so it gets them to do a little bit of theory really quickly, but also gets them to play, their B-flat scale with some emotion behind it, like they're in Jurassic Park or something. And it's just a cool, fun way to get your warm-ups in and to get them to have fun with it. And it's not just, okay, play your scale in half notes, now let's do whole notes. So
His whole mission is to take the fundamentals that kids are supposed to be doing all the time and make it more accessible.
Yeah.
And basically make them go home and want to work on their own fundamentals without you there.
Yeah.
That's his whole mission.
I think he does a great job with it. I
Yeah.
mean, that
Yeah,
stuff is
absolutely.
amazing.
I've started using his sight reading stuff even for my intro to band class because like they're starting to get to the point I'm like, oh, we could sight read some stuff, but like let's make it fun first because he has that's like the video game style like sight reading level 1 kind of thing. And at first the kids were like, what is this? And then after they did a couple, they're like, oh, I get it now. And like
Yeah.
we started sight reading more, and they were getting better and better at it. And afterwards, I was like, was that fun? They're like, yeah, we should do that more often. I was like, oh, we will.
Don't you worry.
But I'm glad they also bought into it because
Yeah.
everything he has in there is fantastic.
Yeah. I had another session that I went to that was also really eye-opening and helpful. I'm still really trying to build the jazz culture at my school. So this session was called From the Top, Building Jazz Culture Through Warm-Ups. And, that immediately that title was like, yeah, that's me. I need that. Because my kids like being there, but it's very much, oh, I got this thing. I can't come to rehearsal today. And like, they're not really, I don't know. They don't seem super excited about it yet. They like it. But something that she starts every rehearsal with is she just puts a song on, same song the entire school year, and they sing and dance to it. So, like, she used Every Day I Have the Blues, the Count Basie version, and she had a group from her school, I think one of the top combos, and she put it on, and we all stood up, and we all, like, swayed and snapped our fingers, and the kids were singing, and, some of them were singing the lyrics, some of them were singing the horn part, and they knew it really well, so they got really into it, and that was kind of her attention grabber for all of her rehearsals. And, she said the first couple weeks are awkward because they don't want to do it, they don't know what it is, but then when they start to know the song, they almost, they just know. So instead of being like, okay, quiet down, everybody, sit down, she just puts the song on, they know. And then her warm-ups, and she said she has 6 jazz ensembles, so little different than the one that I have, but so like her top groups can play all of their scales, circle of force, like chromatics, all of the different scales, but she starts, all of her ensembles trying to go through the scales. Then she does the 5 minutes a day warm-up, which I have the whole handout for that, which is super helpful. But then what I thought was really cool is she has a chart that's just 4 measures of a bunch of jazz standards. So like Blue Monk, Doxy, and she put them all in the same key, so some of them aren't in the original key. But these kids just play down the chart, so they get 4 measures of these, I think it was 12 different songs, and they add that to their vocabulary. And she said that could take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes a day.
Right.
But they do that every day, and then they'll go into soloing after that. And that's kind of how they build their vocabulary and work. So it was really cool to hear that, and I'm going to try that song thing and see if that's something that I can get my kids to buy into. I mean, I don't have it every day, and it sounded like she did. Right. So I don't know if only twice a week opposed to 5 days a week, but give it a shot. But it was cool. It was just, how to get them excited, talking about going to festivals, bringing them out to build that, community and that culture, and getting them to mentor. She said that some kids in her top ensembles take the class for the other ensembles, so that way those advanced players can play with those students that are learning to improv and learning to play. So it was just really interesting.
One other thing you can do too is if you invite somebody local to come in and guest with your band, but only with the jazz ensemble, right? So it's like they feel special.
Right.
You know, whoever that person is, they're better than they are.
Right.
Right. And that's what matters.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
what about the groups you guys heard? You talked about McCracken. That was a clinic band, though, right? They are a performance band. They're amazing.
Right.
But that was a clinic.
Right, and I think they played one piece straight through, if I remember correctly, but the rest of the time, it was basically a clinic band. Yeah, it was sort of open rehearsal type of style, and yeah, he had them doing everything from warm ups to taking a section of the piece and going, okay, now let's do this, and this, and play it again, and can you hear the difference there?
That's something that doesn't happen enough. Is those rehearsal bands at conferences. And Maine, were you in the band when we did it? I don't remember, but just having your band go and being the guinea pig to work with whoever on a piece that doesn't even have to be perfect. That's just another wonderful way to bring culture,
Right.
to build culture.
I saw a handful of groups. One thing that scheduling wise that like frustrated me a little bit with Midwest, and this is kind of like one of my biggest like negatives, I guess, to say about it, is that I never could sit through an entire performance because they would always overlap with a session I wanted to go to. So I'd go listen to like 45 minutes of a group and then like run to make it into another session, which like sometimes I'm like, oh, which one's more useful for me because I want to hear it all. But I heard the majority of the Artie Henry Middle School band perform, and like they opened up. I have the program somewhere. It's like, and my memory's mush, but they opened up with like a grade 4 thing, which like they played phenomenally, and they played anywhere from grades 1 to like 4, and they had different guest conductors come in. But like I was sitting there like, these are middle schoolers. Like this, you sound like a professional group. You are middle schoolers at Midwest right now. I thought they were phenomenal. But then there was one moment where it reminded the audience they were middle schoolers because like a trombone player was like, my instrument's broken, and like they like brought someone in to like take and like bring it off stage and fix, and like everyone like kind of laughed and applauded like, oh right, still a middle schooler whose instrument still will break and whatever. But like the musicality in which they played, everything was just incredible. Like I think it's more common to get high schoolers there because they've been playing for longer, but like in this group is 7th, 8th graders. I'm like, literally how?
Right.
But I thought they were phenomenal. They were one of the groups that I saw.
Yeah, like going off of what Joey said, that was my biggest issue is I did want to see a lot of these ensembles, but I felt that the sessions were going to be more beneficial than seeing the group. So I saw the Westlake High School studio band because Terry had a bunch of charts played, I think 3. They were great. I mean, that was phenomenal. They had a bunch of guest artists come out. I went to the H. Reynolds like Open Conducting Institute rehearsal where he was just working with a small little group of woodwinds and brass, and that was, I mean, they were professionals, not a high school or middle school group, but it was cool to see him conduct and to just, he was hearing things that I was like, I didn't hear that at all, because they were just so good, but I didn't see a lot, unfortunately, because also some of those really good groups were pretty late in the evening, like 8:30, and it was tough to get back to the convention center.
You can't do everything.
Yeah.
And also like needed to eat.
Yeah. I know. Because there was a percussion ensemble I wanted to go see, but yeah, it was all like, I need to go eat. I need
Deep
to.
dish pizza over here.
Yeah,
Ensemble over
we
here.
did do that.
They're all
And
important
there are
experiences.
also a couple groups I wanted to see on Thursday, but because of the weather, they
Right.
pushed them to like 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday, and I was
Yep.
like, yeah, no.
And then
Like, I'm
Canadian
gonna be-
Brass got pushed back like even farther,
Yeah.
even later, and I was like, all right, I'm
Yeah,
out.
I think one of the groups, it might have been them. I think they like ended at 10:30, and I was
yeah,
like, I'm
I think
asleep.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
For me, usually it's day 3. You're like,
yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like drinking from a fire hydrant, right? You
Yep.
say, okay, I'm done. Like
Yeah.
this is all amazing, but
Yeah.
I think I went back and took a nap on the Wednesday. I was like, I'm burnt out.
I almost did. I tried to power through, but I ended up like sitting outside the vendor area, and they had a jazz combo out front, and I just watched that combo for like an hour and a half, and was like, where am I? Like I was like, I should go to a session, and I was like, my brain is not working, so I just
Yeah.
sat and just like people watched and was like, wow, this combo is really good.
Yeah. Like at that point, there's only so it's like, our
Yeah.
brains are sponges, and like at that like end of day 3 point, it's like it's full. And I was like, even if I went to a session, I'm not taking any of this in. So, But on the bright side, all the resources are available to us and
Right.
like have access to. They can go back and like look at and watch and everything. So
This
that's
being
great.
this being my first ever time going to Midwest, I almost felt that way after day one.
Yeah.
I mean,
True,
just
yeah.
after day one, I was just sitting there in my hotel room going, "Wow."
Yep.
I mean, that was just. I kept saying that to myself, like, my goodness,
Yeah.
where has this been all my life? And I know it's
Yeah.
been there, but I mean, just being able to go and experience that, and as you said, 2 more days of it after that.
Right.
But it
just-
inspires you.
It-
Like
yeah.
I
Absolutely.
left being like, I love my job.
Yeah, I was like, I'm
I
gonna go
can't
back to
wait.
school. Maybe I'll get back in time to go to school for a little bit on Thursday. I'll go. I did not, by the
No.
way, because like I was talking to Will Kinney before, like we actually went, and he was like, you don't have to go to everything. Like you need to like breathe. And like after Monday, I was like, what are you talking about? I can go to everything. And then like Tuesday afternoon, I was like, I'm a little tired, but I can do it. And then Wednesday morning, I was like,
It hits you.
okay,
Yeah,
I can't do it today. So, yeah.
What about people you guys connected with? Were the people that you hadn't seen in a while, or people that you met and made connections with, or?
I mean, I personally, and I will give credit to Missy Shable for all of this. I connected with a lot of like Maine teachers who like I've known of and we've known of each other, but I didn't necessarily talk to a lot. Because like the Monday night of going there, like we had like a Maine teacher hang and like we were able to like talk and get to know one another and whatnot. And so there's just a bunch of people from our local area that I'm like, oh, I'll see you at Allstate kind of things that
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I agree. It was meeting people that I've seen that I've never really actually talked to from Maine and getting to hang out and spend time with them. Some walking around the vendors was cool too. There was a company that Garlinger Batons. Like I bought a baton from them 3 months ago, and then I saw them, bought another baton. But I got to meet them.
You have
and
two
they were
hands, so you need.
yeah, exactly. That's what I thought.
I have 3 now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it was cool to meet her and talk to them and buy another one. I went up to the Drum Corps International booth and like oddly enough, the guy was like, "Oh, I'm the open class coordinator," and I was like, "I marched open class." Then he was like, "Oh, are you so and so?" And I was like, "What is going on?" And then just talking to those vendors and being able to make those connections and see some of what they had. There's a lot of options out there, so it was cool to just put a face to some of them. And but I mean, the connection thing was big.
Getting to meet like Randall Standridge.
Oh, yeah.
you know,
That was
and-
great.
But and it was funny because every time I was in the exhibit hall, and I probably went through the exhibits probably 4 or 5 times just to make sure I saw everything.
Yeah.
And he was like Elvis. I mean, there was
Yeah.
a line of 50.
It was
deep of
always
people.
so
Oh my
long.
gosh.
Yeah.
So Monday, when Heather and I got there, I don't know. We didn't get the memo or whatever. We just got there really early at like 8:30, and we looked and we were like, "Oh, let's go in the vendors. We gotta wait." And we just walked right in, and I'm like, "Wow, nobody is here." Like there was some people not at their booth, and then
Because it didn't open until 9:30.
so we're walking. We go talk to Randall. There's like no line, and we're having a conversation. There are other people in there like that are like us, but they're we're just kind of like, this is weird. We walk by the Hall Leonard booth. Johan Demai is there like eating a banana, and we're like, what is going on here? And then we hear the announcement: vendor is now open. We were like, oh, we went through everything already.
So go early is what you're telling
So
people.
Yeah,
go early
that's
and
the
just
secret.
sneak by. I don't know how we did it. We just walked in, and they just looked at us, and I don't know if we look like vendors. I don't know.
Look like you own the place.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I got there at like
Walk with
I got there at
confidence.
like 9, and they had like guards at each entrance. Like it's not 9:30 yet, and I was like, okay. And then I think you had texted like Missy and Missy's like, so Hailey's with Randall Sanders right now, and we were like, how?
Yeah, we just walked up to he was talking to one other guy, but the other person that was with him was like, oh yeah, help yourself to a couple free scores. If you want him to sign them, just hang around. And we talked to him for a while, and then we walked by, a couple hours later, and the line, you're right, was like down the hall, and we were like, okay, so we got there at a good time.
right.
Yeah. Nice guy.
Oh, yeah.
Funny. He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about a lot of things that we're going to do as New Year's resolutions kind of informally already, but I want to hear from you guys, like what is the biggest thing that you want to do differently come next Tuesday or Monday or whenever you go back to school that you want to start incorporating? Adam, we'll start with you.
Boy, it would be tough to narrow it down to one. There's a lot of things that I can't.
All right,
that's
we'll
I
name a
wanna do
couple.
that. So, number one, I definitely, and I've heard people discuss like, using the drone to help with tuning. And I, for my own, I hadn't figured out a way yet to effectively use that. And I saw Chip DiStefano using it. I saw, a few others using it as well. And it gave me some ideas of ways I can incorporate that into doing what I'm doing with my students.
Great.
And so that's going to be number one, first thing Tuesday at 7:20 in the morning on Tuesday morning.
God bless you.
Couldn't be me.
I'm immediately going to start with that and start using that as a tool. So for sure.
Great. Hailey?
I have two really big ones. One, I think what I got out of everything was just to trust myself as an educator, and that I'm hearing things that are legit, and the things I'm doing are working. I second guess myself a lot, and I try to find, what is everybody else doing? What can I do? But a lot of those sessions, they said things, and I was like, I do that. And there was a lot of other people that were like, oh, I could start doing that. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I think just like being comfortable with myself and trusting what I'm doing, but also trying to plan my full year before the school year starts and align it with the goals and the expectations that I have for the year. One of the sessions, I don't remember what it was called, Click Save, How to Plan Rehearsals and Optimize Learning and Retention. Like, she gave this whole handout of how to plan, your entire year, your repertoire, putting rehearsal dates down and letting kids see that. And so I think if I did that, I would maybe have a little bit better of a timeline with some of my rehearsals. I tend to do things very on the fly sometimes, and I'm like, oh, we're just going to sight read this, and then we sight read it, and I'm like, oh, cool, that sounded good, let's do that. So I think planning ahead.
But you're getting to a point, too, where you can start, your group,
Yeah.
and you can see a score, and you can say, yeah, it's not going to work for us, or
Right.
this is going to work.
Yeah, and that was like I went into my first year there of like, I have no idea how these kids play. I
Right.
have no idea what they can handle. I don't know what they know. And now I'm figuring out, they can handle this little push, or they can't handle that. So I think being able to sit down on Tuesday, I'm really going to look at, the rest of my year and what ensembles need what. And specifically, my jazz area and what I can do in jazz and applying some of those.
One thing I would suggest everybody do, if you're relatively new to your school, if you've been there long enough, you know what's in the library, but take a couple days and go through your library and listen to everything you don't know. Because there's a lot of stuff, I'm sure, that's really good in your jazz library and your concert library. And you say, well, I should do that piece. We already own it. It's going to save us $85 or whatever
Right.
it is.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Yarmouth, I would like be listening and trying to find stuff, and then I would check the library and go, "Oh, we have that." Yeah, so that's 10 out of 10. For me, going into the new year, I think one thing I took away, well, many things, from the Christine Cumberledge session, the filling your toolbox, is that a lot of the like behavioral issues I find, especially at the middle school, like 5th and 7th grade specifically, is just truly where they're sitting. So she suggested like don't just make a seating chart based on like kids behaviorally where you think they'll go, like seat them like strong player, weak player, because like they'll start helping each other out kind of thing, and like the stronger kids will like turn to whoever's next to them and like start helping them out kind of thing. And I was thinking like, especially my 5th grade saxophones, I was like, there's already like a big range of like who can do what, and we've only been at it for like a couple weeks really. So I think the first section will be like, hey, happy break, assign seating, and like, but like I'm gonna tell them I'm just gonna do it randomly, but really it's gonna be, okay, that's a strong player, like you can go there kind of thing. And I think try to be more strict, because I always go like, oh, I'll just like trust kids to sit where they want, like we'll move kids if we need to. But I think what I should do is, as soon as I can like assess those kids and like figure out where they are,
Right.
do that like right away. And be like, I'm not punishing you. This is like for your best interest of seating where you're going to be sitting. So I think I want to like start the new year with that and then go from there.
One of the things I want to work on, I have two little things. One thing and like a comment. The first one is, I think I do it pretty well, but I want to continue to get better at using fundamental block, because I don't go a day without doing fundamental block in the bands. The fundamental block is always changing. It's not the same, because I've witnessed bands where they do the same thing every year for verbatim, and the kids just check out really quick. So I want to keep doubling down on that block, using the drone even more. I do use it, but I want to use it even more. And then the second thing was, I have a couple pieces right now that I'm trying to push a couple of my ensembles to figure out, because we know post-COVID, like the pushing kids is totally different. It's like pushing like a waterbed or something, or a bowl of spaghetti. Like it's just you just can't push it.
Right.
And Yeah, but I have some groups that I wonder if they're ready for a little bit of a push. So the next couple of weeks are going to be kind of telling, because I have a couple pieces in general that we're working on that it's like, okay, I think this is a little hard for them, but I think if they just buck up a little bit, and then I'll know real quick if I just said, nope, that was a fail, and I'll abort and go to something else. Because in, like, say there's 3 pieces in the program, it's one of the 3 pieces. 2 of the 3 I know are perfect for them. So then I'm kind of using it to feel them out a little bit more and see, will this work for these kids, or do I really need to scale that back too? And some of the kids already are super excited about this quote-unquote challenge.
Yeah.
And I just can't tell which is going to be stronger, the super excited or the not super excited.
Right. And is it excited because they like how it sounds, or excited because they're excited to like dig into it?
Right.
Both, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anybody else have anything else?
Go to Midwest.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, this was my first time going, and I definitely want to go back.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I'm going to be trying to make it a yearly thing.
Yeah. If possible, for sure.
Yeah. Because, I mean, yeah, it was a good emotional reset to just make you feel inspired. And, you know, I think we all, especially at the end of marching band season, and some of us going into winter percussion and jazz band, we're at that wall of like, oh my God, we're not even halfway there yet. That was a really nice reset.
Yeah. I always find that like the stretch from September to December is the longest because it's not broken up with as many breaks, at least for the Maine school system. I know every break schedule is different in other states. So it's like, oh, we made it to December break. The rest of the year, we've got this. So
Yeah. Yeah.
knock on wood.
All right, I'm going to throw a curveball at you guys.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yikes.
Oh,
Can you
man.
hit the curveball?
I'm bad at sports, but go ahead.
That's basketball, right?
I failed at all the things.
I'm kidding.
You hit it for the field goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Basket.
Yeah, sorry.
A piece that you really love. It doesn't have to be a piece that is like this brand new piece nobody knows about. It just like a piece that you just really love to do, and it can be any level band. I'm going to start to buy you another couple seconds before it's your turn.
There.
And you can say pass if you want to, but for me, the piece is Kentucky 1800 by Claire Grundman. The only time you shouldn't do it is if you have 7,000 percussionists in that band and they're in the rehearsal with you. Other than that, it's a great piece of music from 1950s, and I think a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people know about it and they're rolling their eyes, but it's a great piece of music. Kentucky 1800.
I know the piece,
have
but I want to
one.
look up the composer just to make sure I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Mine is Luke Sarumquay by Eric Whitaker.
I do love that piece.
I like. You have to have a band that can listen and have good intonation for
Good
it
tone,
to,
yeah.
really, have the full effect. And it's sorry, percussionist, and I'm a percussionist, so I feel like it's okay for me to.
So what do? You have, like, there's no percussion part.
I usually have them play a mallet part. Like I try to do the metallic percussion and give them one of the woodwind parts. And it depends.
Why metallic?
Just fits the.
Light and gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shining from the
fits
sea. Yeah.
the whole mood of it. It's just beautiful. I just love pieces with that chord, like that kind of chord structure, and just I don't know. I love lyrical things like that and the slow pieces.
And it is harder than people think, but
It is. Yeah.
you can play it.
Right. It like it looks super easy, but it's really all about just intonation and listening. And I always try to introduce it. I'll play it for kids, but I turn the lights off and I just make them kind of have a moment with it. And they always end up loving it. I've done it a couple times now, and it's awesome.
I
That's a good
think first time I heard that piece was 2010, and it was the Maine All-State Band. I forget who was doing it. Peter Martin was doing it. And it was one of these, I just never heard anything like it. To hear like 120 kids who could playing this thing that's whole notes and half notes. And I remember we had a flute player who was sitting right in the middle of the band in the front row. She didn't play for like a big part of it. And she's like, this is the best thing I've ever been a part of. I'm sitting inside this band playing this just awesome.
Just the chord structure is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. So
How do we spell that, Luke Sarumquay? Lux space.
Arumquay.
I always forget the Arumquay.
I
You are.
Eric Whitaker, Luke's, and it'll come up for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember
pretty
singing
much-
that in high school, but I how do you spell it? Yeah.
Is it originally a choral piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
AURUMQUE.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
So for me, one of the best pieces I've ever conducted with my group has ended up being one of my favorites. It's not a super complicated piece, but it's called Air and Dance. It's spelled Ayre, and Dance by, I believe, Bruce Pearson is the composer of it. If you're looking for a piece to, some people might call it a teaching piece. I think every piece is a teaching piece, but it just works on so many different things all at the same time. But what has shocked me is in concerts where I've done that piece, I survey my students at the end of every year to see which pieces they liked, what they didn't like, whatever. And I would highly encourage people to do that if they don't already. You'll be amazed at the results. But every time I program that piece, it is by far their favorite piece of the entire year. Because there's this nice slow section of the air, and then the dance is a totally different contrasting part of the piece, and I love everything about it.
Grade level?
Probably 1.5, somewhere in there. But with my students, it's just every single time we do it, they absolutely adore it. So it's ended up being one of my
And you can do those pieces with young high school kids, too. I did Celtic Air and Dance, Michael Sweeney. It's great. Very similar, right?
Yep, absolutely. So,
Mr. Hendricks?
So I remember finding this piece my very first year teaching because I remember right away wanting to challenge myself and find stuff that I'd never played or heard to just, grow my own knowledge. And it's in Canto by Robert W. Smith. It has so much, and I remember first hearing it being like, this piece is awesome, but you never know how teenagers are going to react to stuff, and they also listened to it and went, oh, this piece is awesome, but
This is not Encanto. This is
no,
before Encanto.
This is before Encanto. This is not the Disney one. No. As much as I love that one, no, it's not this. Yeah, but it starts with this kind of brass choir thing, and it's very melodic, and then it goes into this nice da 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 da, all in 3/4, which is a time signature. It's
Right.
not every kid likes or
It's
vibes
almost
with,
like 6/8/3/4, but it's not 6/8/3/4.
Absolutely, because then they have the underlying the da 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 at the same time, so it helps with syncopation, and then it has a nice middle slower section, and just I don't know. There's so much there, and to each kid's individual part, it's not the most challenging thing in the entire world, but making all the different pieces fit. Is just great. I did it with a group of 12 during COVID when numbers were way down and they were all about it. And they were like, is this a really hard piece? And I'm like, no, but there's stuff that makes it hard to put together, especially in a smaller ensemble. And I have found so much success with it, and I've done it a couple times, and it's 10 out of 10.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for making the trip down from the North Country and the South Country. And
I live 20 minutes away.
yeah.
Must be nice.
yeah.
Okay, that's a wrap.
Cool.
Beautiful.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.